Sometimes, the person everyone ignores is the only one who can save what matters most. The restaurant was filled with the soft clinking of glasses and the low hum of conversations worth millions of dollars. Crystal chandeliers reflected warm light across polished marble floors, while executives in tailored suits discussed mergers, investments, and private jets. It was the kind of place where powerful people came to be seen. And on that rainy Thursday evening in Manhattan, one of the most powerful men in the room sat alone with his son. Ethan Walker was a billionaire known across America. His technology company had transformed entire industries, and business magazines regularly listed him among the country's most influential leaders. Yet none of that mattered at the moment. Across from him sat 8-year-old Kenji, a quiet boy with dark hair and thoughtful eyes, staring down at a phone trembling slightly in his small hands. Then everything changed. A voice crackled through the speaker. The call had come from Japan. Kenji listened for only a few seconds before his face lost all color. His eyes widened. His breathing quickened. Suddenly, tears filled his eyes. "Dad!" he cried in Japanese. "Dad, Grandma is very sick." The words came fast. Too fast. Ethan froze. He loved his son more than anything in the world. But there was one painful reality he could never escape. Kenji spoke English fluently, yet whenever strong emotions overwhelmed him, he instinctively returned to Japanese, the language of his early childhood. Ethan understood only fragments. "Kenji," he said gently, leaning forward. "Slow down. What happened?" But the boy was already crying. The elderly woman on the phone continued speaking rapidly. Her voice sounded weak.
Urgent.
Desperate. Kenji struggled to answer between sobs. Around them, conversations stopped. Diners turned their heads. A few people stared. Others looked uncomfortable and quickly returned to their meals. Not a single person stepped forward. Ethan glanced around the room. Surely someone understood Japanese. Surely someone could help. But nobody moved. Not the manager. Not the staff. Not the guests seated at nearby tables. For the first time in years, Ethan Walker felt completely powerless. Billions of dollars could buy private jets, luxury homes, and entire companies. But they could not help him understand the frightened words of his own child. Then a quiet voice appeared behind him. "May I help?" Ethan turned. Standing beside the table was a young black waitress carrying a tray. Her name tag read Maya Brooks. She was one of dozens of employees working the evening shift. Most customers barely noticed her. She was quiet, polite, almost invisible. Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, Maya looked directly at Kenji and said something in perfect Japanese. The boy instantly stopped crying. The phone nearly slipped from his hands. His eyes widened with disbelief. Silence spread through the restaurant. Every sound seemed to disappear. And for the first time that night, Maya spoke again in a calm Kyoto accent that left even Kenji speechless. Ethan stared at her, unable to understand one thing. How could a shy waitress in Manhattan speak Japanese like she had lived there her entire life? Maya's words seemed to change the air itself. One moment, Kenji had been drowning in panic. The next, he was listening. Really listening. His small shoulders relaxed as he stared at the waitress standing beside the table. Tears still glistened in his eyes, but the fear that had gripped him moments earlier began to loosen. Maya knelt beside him so they were at eye level. Her voice remained soft and steady, carrying the calm confidence of someone who understood exactly what needed to be said. She listened carefully to the elderly woman speaking through the phone. Occasionally she nodded. Occasionally she smiled gently. Then she translated for Kenji with remarkable care, not rushing, not interrupting, allowing every word to land exactly where it belonged. Ethan watched in silence. The billionaire who negotiated billion-dollar deals without hesitation suddenly felt like an outsider in his own family's conversation. Yet strangely, he did not feel excluded. He felt grateful. Around them, diners continued watching. Some pretended not to stare. Others openly listened. Even the restaurant manager had stopped moving. The entire room seemed drawn toward the quiet exchange unfolding at table 12. Maya was not simply translating words. She was building a bridge. Your grandmother says she is thinking about the cherry blossoms near her home, Maya told Kenji gently. She says she remembers the day you planted a small tree with her when you were 5 years old. Kenji's face softened immediately. She remembers that? He asked in Japanese. Maya smiled and translated the question. A moment later, the answer came through the speaker. Maya's eyes brightened. She says she remembers every moment she spent with you. Kenji lowered his head as fresh tears appeared, but these were different. They were no longer tears of panic. They were tears of love. Ethan swallowed hard. For months he had watched his son struggle with the distance between America and Japan. Business commitments often kept them in New York while family remained overseas. Video calls helped, but they never replaced being together. Tonight that distance suddenly felt heavier than ever. Then Maya paused. For the first time, her expression changed. It was subtle, almost invisible, but Ethan noticed it. Something important had just been said. What is it? He asked quietly. Maya looked at him. Her dark eyes held a mixture of compassion and concern. Your son's grandmother wants him to know something, she said softly. Something she has never told him before. The restaurant seemed to fall even quieter. Maya listened again. The elderly woman continued speaking in a weak but determined voice. When she finished, Maya took a slow breath. Kenji looked up at her expectantly. Ethan's heart began to pound. Then Maya translated. She says there is a letter. Kenji blinked. A letter? Maya nodded. A letter she wrote years ago. She wanted you to receive it when you were older. Ethan frowned. He had never heard about any letter. Neither had Kenji. Yet, judging by the surprise in the grandmother's voice, this was not a misunderstanding. This was real. Maya continued listening. The elderly woman explained where the letter had been hidden and why she had kept it secret all these years. As Maya translated each sentence, Ethan felt a strange unease growing inside him. Whatever was written in that letter had mattered enough for an elderly woman to protect it for nearly a decade. And judging by the look now spreading across Maya's face, its contents were about to change far more than one evening in a Manhattan restaurant. The phone remained pressed against Kenji's ear, as if letting go might cause the connection to disappear forever. His grandmother continued speaking softly from thousands of miles away, her voice crossing oceans and time zones to reach a crowded restaurant in Manhattan. Maya listened carefully, translating each sentence with patience and warmth. Yet Ethan could tell something had shifted. The conversation was no longer about memories. It was about answers. She wants you to know where the letter is hidden, Maya explained. Kenji nodded quickly. Tell me. The elderly woman spoke again. Maya translated slowly. Inside the wooden music box in her bedroom, the one with the carved cranes. Kenji immediately recognized it. Ethan did too. He had seen it during visits to Japan, sitting on a shelf near a window overlooking a small garden. It always seemed ordinary, just another family keepsake. Now it suddenly felt important. Why did she hide it? Kenji asked. Maya translated. The answer came almost immediately. This time the waitress remained silent for several seconds before speaking. Because she promised someone she would protect it until the right moment. Ethan felt a chill he could not explain. Across the restaurant, glasses clinked and servers moved between tables, but everything felt distant. The world had narrowed to one phone call, one letter, and one young waitress serving as the bridge between generations. Kenji asked another question. Maya listened. Then her expression softened. She says the letter is not about money. Ethan blinked. That answer surprised him. In wealthy families, secrets often involved inheritances, businesses, or property. Apparently this one did not. Then what is it about? Kenji asked. The answer that followed caused Maya to lower her eyes briefly before translating. It is about why your mother chose your name. Silence settled over the table. Ethan froze. Kenji froze. Even the phone seemed quiet for a moment. His mother, Ethan's late wife, had passed away years earlier. Kenji rarely spoke about the loss, but Ethan knew the absence still lived inside him. Some wounds simply learned how to whisper instead of shout. My name, Kenji asked softly. Maya nodded. Your grandmother says there is a story your mother wanted you to hear when you were old enough to understand it. Ethan glanced at his son. The boy's eyes were fixed on the phone. Every trace of panic had disappeared. In its place was something deeper. Curiosity, hope, connection. For the first time that evening, Ethan realized Maya had done more than help translate a conversation. She had given his son something he desperately needed. A way back to his family. A way back to his roots. Then the grandmother said something longer. Much longer. Maya listened without interrupting. Her face gradually changed from curiosity to surprise. When the elderly woman finished, Maya looked directly at Ethan. There is something else, she said quietly. Something your mother-in-law wants you to know. Ethan's chest tightened. What is it? Maya hesitated. Not because she did not understand. Because she clearly understood perfectly. Around them, the restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Then Maya finally spoke. She says the reason she recognized my voice tonight is because we have met before. Ethan stared at her. Kenji stared at her. Maya looked just as shocked as they were. Because until that moment, she had been absolutely certain she had never met anyone from their family in her life. For a moment, nobody spoke. Maya stood frozen beside the table, still holding the phone while 1,000 questions raced through her mind. She looked at Ethan, then at Kenji, then back at the phone. There must be some mistake, she said softly in Japanese. The elderly woman answered immediately. Her voice carried certainty, not confusion, not doubt, certainty. Maya listened as the woman described a summer afternoon nearly 12 years earlier in Kyoto. A crowded neighborhood festival. Red paper lanterns swaying in the evening breeze. Music drifting through narrow streets. Children laughing. Families gathering beneath strings of lights. Maya's eyes widened. She remembered it. Not every detail, but enough. She had been 16 years old, spending a semester abroad through a cultural exchange program. It had been one of the happiest periods of her life. The elderly woman continued speaking. Maya felt her heart begin to race. What is she saying? Ethan asked quietly. Maya swallowed. She says we met at a festival near her home. Ethan frowned. You remember her? Maya nodded slowly. I remember helping an older woman find her grandson. Kenji blinked. A grandson? Maya translated the question. The answer came back almost instantly. Then the waitress stared at the boy with disbelief. She says that grandson was you. Silence settled over the table again. Ethan leaned back in his chair. Kenji looked completely stunned. Maya could barely process it herself. The grandmother explained that during the festival, young Kenji had wandered away from his family. Nothing dangerous had happened. He had simply become separated from them in a sea of people. While adults searched, a teenage exchange student who spoke both English and Japanese stayed with him, kept him calm, and helped reunite him with his grandmother. Maya remembered now. A small boy holding a paper crane. Big curious eyes. A shy smile. She remembered waiting with him beside a food stand until his grandmother arrived. At the time it had seemed like a small act of kindness. Something anyone would have done. Yet here they were, more than a decade later, standing together again on the other side of the world. That was you? Kenji asked in Japanese. Maya smiled softly. I think it was. The boy stared at her for several seconds. Then a faint smile appeared through the emotion still lingering on his face. I still have the paper crane. Maya felt something catch in her chest. She had completely forgotten about the folded crane she had given him that evening. Yet somehow he had kept it all these years. Ethan watched the exchange unfold. For the first time since entering the restaurant, he was no longer thinking about business meetings, quarterly reports, or tomorrow's schedule. He was watching something far more valuable. Connection. A thread stretching across continents and years. Then the grandmother spoke once more. This time her voice grew softer, more emotional. Maya listened carefully. When she finally translated, her own voice had changed. She says there is one more reason she wanted the letter to reach Kenji. Ethan looked up. Kenji gripped the edge of the table. The grandmother continued speaking, and as Maya listened, she realized the secret hidden inside that letter was far bigger than any of them had imagined. The elderly woman's voice trembled gently through the phone, not with fear, but with emotion. Maya listened carefully, her eyes fixed on the table as if each word carried the weight of years. When the woman finally paused, Maya took a slow breath before translating. She says your mother believed every person enters our lives for a reason. Kenji lowered his gaze. Ethan remained silent. The restaurant around them seemed to fade further into the background. She says the letter contains a promise your mother made before she passed away. Kenji's fingers tightened around the phone. Maya continued, a promise that one day, when you were ready, you would learn something important about yourself. Ethan felt his chest tighten. Over the years, he had protected his son from many difficult conversations. He had waited for the right moment to explain certain parts of the family's history. Yet now it appeared his late wife had left behind a message of her own. One she had entrusted to her mother. One she had never shared with him. What kind of promise? Kenji asked softly. The answer came slowly, deliberately. Maya listened to every word. Then she smiled. A small smile. The kind that appears when something painful and beautiful exist in the same memory. She says your mother worried you would spend your life trying to become someone important. Ethan looked up immediately. Those words felt uncomfortably familiar. Growing up as the son of one of America's most successful entrepreneurs had never been easy for Kenji. Expectations followed him everywhere. People assumed greatness would come naturally. They expected him to become another Ethan Walker. The grandmother continued speaking. Maya translated. Your mother wanted you to know that your value would never come from achievements, money, titles, or success. Kenji's eyes filled with tears again. This time neither Ethan nor Maya interrupted. She wrote that your greatest strength would be your kindness. Silence settled over the table. Ethan looked away for a moment. Of all the lessons he had tried to teach his son, he suddenly wondered if he had focused too much on ambition and not enough on compassion. The grandmother's voice returned. Maya listened. Then her expression changed once more. Surprise flickered across her face. There is another part, she said. A part addressed to someone she never expected to meet again. Ethan frowned. Kenji looked confused. Maya slowly pointed toward herself. Me. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The grandmother explained that years ago, after the festival, young Kenji had talked constantly about the kind exchange student who stayed with him when he was scared. His mother had listened to every story. She had even written about that stranger in the letter. Not by name. She never knew Maya's name. But she wrote about the lesson. The lesson that one act of kindness from a stranger can stay in someone's heart forever. Maya felt her eyes sting. Across the table, Kenji smiled through his tears. She wrote about you? He asked. Maya nodded slowly. Then the grandmother said something that caused Maya to freeze completely. Her eyes widened. Her breath caught. Ethan immediately noticed. What is it? He asked. Maya looked from Ethan to Kenji, struggling to find the words. Because according to the grandmother, the final page of the letter contained a request. A request written years ago by Kenji's mother. A request meant for the stranger from the festival if their paths ever crossed again. For a long moment, Maya could not speak. The restaurant lights reflected softly across the polished tables, but she barely noticed. Her attention remained fixed on the voice coming through the phone. The elderly woman repeated herself gently, as if understanding how unbelievable the request sounded. Maya listened again. The words did not change. Neither did their meaning. Years ago, before her passing, Kenji's mother had written a final message for the stranger who once comforted her son. Not because she expected them to meet again. Quite the opposite. She believed they never would. Yet she wanted the message included anyway, just in case life decided to do something extraordinary. Ethan watched Maya carefully. He had spent decades reading people in boardrooms. He could recognize surprise, uncertainty, and sincerity. What he saw on Maya's face now was genuine. Whatever the message contained, she had not expected it. What did she write? Kenji asked softly. Maya swallowed. The grandmother spoke once more, giving permission to share it. Then Maya translated. Your mother wrote that if the kind stranger from the festival ever crossed paths with you again, she hoped that person would remind you of something important. Kenji leaned forward. Ethan did the same. She wanted someone outside the family to tell you that kindness matters, because people remember how you make them feel long after they forget what you said. The words settled quietly over the table. Simple words, yet powerful. The kind of truth that becomes more valuable with time. Kenji lowered his eyes. Maya could see he was thinking about his mother, thinking about memories, thinking about everything he wished he could still ask her. Then the grandmother continued. Maya listened. This time her eyes widened again. There is more. Ethan felt his curiosity grow. What else? Maya took a careful breath. Your mother wrote that if the stranger ever appeared again, she hoped that person would stay in your life long enough to remind you who you are whenever the world tried to tell you who you should be. Silence. Complete silence. Even Ethan struggled to respond. The statement felt strangely personal, almost impossible. A message written years ago for someone whose name they never knew. Someone who should have remained a distant memory. Yet that person was standing beside them now, holding the phone, translating every word. Maya shook her head softly. I do not know what to say. The grandmother laughed gently through the speaker. The warm sound immediately softened the tension. Then she said something that made Maya smile for the first time all evening. She says you already said it years ago. Maya translated her own words from memory. Words she had spoken to a frightened little boy at a summer festival. You are not lost. Your family is looking for you. Kenji stared at her. Slowly, a smile appeared on his face. I remember that. Maya laughed softly. You do. He nodded. I remember feeling scared. Then I remember believing you. Ethan looked between them and felt something unexpected. Peace. For the first time since the phone call began, his son looked lighter, happier, connected. Then the grandmother's voice returned one final time. This time it carried urgency. There was something she wanted Ethan and Kenji to do immediately after arriving in Japan. Something waiting inside the music box. And according to her, the final page of the letter contained a photograph that would explain why fate had brought all three of them together again after so many years. The grandmother's final words lingered in the air long after she finished speaking. Maya held the phone carefully, as if the connection itself had become something precious. Across the table, Kenji sat quietly, absorbing everything he had heard. The frightened boy who had arrived at dinner that evening seemed different now. Calmer, stronger. Ethan noticed it too. Sometimes a person does not need answers. Sometimes they need connection. And somehow, against every reasonable expectation, that connection had arrived wearing a waitress uniform. The grandmother explained that the music box should be opened as soon as they reached Japan. Not next week. Not next month. Immediately. Her voice carried a gentle urgency. Maya translated every word. Then the elderly woman described the photograph hidden inside the final page of the letter. She would not reveal everything. She wanted them to see it with their own eyes. But she offered one clue. A clue that immediately captured everyone's attention. The photograph contains 3 people. Maya translated. Ethan frowned. Kenji leaned forward. 3 people. The grandmother confirmed it. Then she added something even stranger. According to her, one of those people had no idea the photograph existed. Maya listened. Her expression shifted from curiosity to disbelief. Who? Kenji asked. The answer came slowly. The grandmother spoke a few quiet sentences. Then Maya froze, completely froze. Her eyes widened. For several seconds she could not translate. Ethan felt his pulse quicken. Maya? He asked gently. She looked up. She says that person is me. Silence. Absolute silence. Even the distant conversations throughout the restaurant seemed to disappear. Maya shook her head immediately. That cannot be right. Yet the grandmother insisted. Years earlier, during the festival, A local photographer had captured a candid picture near the lantern display. At the time, nobody paid attention. It was simply one random moment among thousands. A teenager helping a lost child. A grandmother rushing to embrace her grandson. Then everyone returned to their lives. The photograph was later mailed to the family. Kenji's mother loved it. Not because it was perfect, because it captured kindness. She had kept the photograph ever since. Ethan leaned back slowly. The coincidence felt impossible. Yet the evening had already become a collection of impossible moments. Kenji stared at Maya with amazement. "My mom kept a picture of you?" Maya laughed softly in disbelief. "Apparently she did." The grandmother continued speaking. Her voice sounded tired now, but peaceful. Maya translated carefully. "She says your mother believed some people enter our lives for only a moment and still leave a permanent mark." Ethan lowered his eyes. Those words struck deeper than he expected. Throughout his career, he had measured value through numbers, growth charts, contracts, and outcomes. Yet tonight, the most important thing in the room had been a small act of kindness from years ago. Then the grandmother shared one final detail about the photograph. A detail that made Ethan's heart stop for a moment. Because hidden in the background of that picture was something none of them had ever noticed before. Something connected directly to Ethan himself. Something that would completely change how he understood this extraordinary chain of events. Maya stared at the phone, struggling to understand how a photograph taken years ago could possibly have anything to do with Ethan Walker. The grandmother spoke softly, her voice growing weaker but her memory remaining sharp. Maya translated carefully. "She says nobody noticed it at the time. Not your mother. Not me. Not even the photographer." Ethan leaned forward. Kenji sat perfectly still. The entire evening had become a trail of unexpected connections, and somehow each revelation seemed more impossible than the last. "What was in the background?" Ethan asked. Maya listened to the answer. Then she slowly smiled. Not because the revelation was shocking, because it was strangely beautiful. "There was a banner hanging above the festival entrance," she explained. "Most people ignored it. It was advertising a scholarship program for international students." Maya paused. Her eyes widened slightly as another realization settled in. The scholarship program was funded by Walker Global Foundation. Ethan blinked. He had not heard that name in years. Before his technology empire became one of the largest companies in America, his father had established a charitable foundation supporting educational opportunities around the world. Over time, the foundation funded thousands of students. Ethan had inherited responsibility for it, but business demands often kept him distant from its daily work. The grandmother continued speaking. Maya translated. "She says your mother found it meaningful." The boy in the photograph was helped by a student who had traveled to Japan because of a scholarship connected to the same family he would eventually become part of. Silence settled over the table. Ethan looked down. For years, he had viewed the foundation as one of many responsibilities. Important, yes, but distant, abstract. Numbers on reports, annual budgets, grant approvals. Yet sitting here now was a living reminder that those decisions had real faces attached to them. Real stories. Maya lowered her eyes. "That scholarship was mine." Ethan looked up immediately. "You received support from the foundation?" Maya nodded. "When I was 16, she laughed softly. "I never imagined I would meet anyone connected to it." Kenji smiled. "And now you are sitting with us." "Apparently," Maya replied. The grandmother laughed gently through the speaker. Then she said something that caused Maya's smile to fade into quiet emotion. "She says your mother always believed kindness travels farther than we can see." Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Those words lingered in his mind. A scholarship helped a teenager travel across the world. That teenager comforted a lost child. Years later, that same child sat beside her again during one of the most important conversations of his life. None of it could have been planned, yet somehow it fit together. Then the grandmother shared one final thought. Maya listened carefully before translating. "She says when you open the music box, do not focus on the photograph. Focus on what is written on the back." Ethan frowned. Kenji looked confused. "What is written there?" he asked. The elderly woman responded with a warm laugh. "That," Maya translated, "is the surprise your mother wanted all of you to discover together." The call finally came to an end. Maya translated the grandmother's last words, and for a few seconds nobody moved. Then Kenji lifted the phone and quietly said goodbye in Japanese. His voice was steady now, strong. The fear that had filled his eyes at the beginning of the evening had been replaced by something else. Understanding, hope, connection. When the call disconnected, the restaurant seemed to wake up around them. Conversations slowly returned. Glasses clinked. Servers moved between tables. Yet Ethan remained seated, staring at Maya. Earlier that evening, she had been just another employee in a crowded dining room, someone most people would have overlooked. Now she had become part of a story that stretched across continents, generations, and years. Ethan stood and reached for his wallet. Maya immediately shook her head. "Please do not." He paused. "You have no idea what you did for us tonight." Maya smiled gently. "Actually, I think I do." The answer surprised him. She looked toward Kenji. "He needed his family. I simply helped them hear each other." For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Kenji reached into his pocket. Carefully, he unfolded something old and worn. A paper crane. The edges were faded from time. The folds were no longer perfect, but it was still intact. Maya stared at it in disbelief. "You kept it?" she whispered. Kenji nodded. "You told me that day not to be afraid." Maya felt tears gather in her eyes. Not because of the crane, because of what it represented. One small act, one ordinary moment, one choice to help a frightened child. And somehow that moment had traveled through the years until it arrived back in front of her. Ethan looked at his son, then at Maya. "We are flying to Japan tomorrow morning," he said. "When we open that music box, I think my wife would have wanted us to tell you what was written on the back of that photograph." Maya smiled. "I would like that." As Ethan and Kenji prepared to leave, the boy turned back one last time. "My mom was right." Maya tilted her head. "About what?" Kenji smiled. "Kindness travels farther than we can see." Then they walked away together, father and son, not healed completely, not finished with their journey, but closer than they had been when they entered the restaurant. Maya watched them disappear through the doors into the Manhattan night. And for the first time in years, she thought about the strange way life works. We often believe the biggest moments arrive with applause, headlines, and recognition. But sometimes they arrive quietly, disguised as an ordinary evening, an old memory, a forgotten paper crane. Because the people who change our lives are not always the ones with power. Sometimes they are simply the ones who choose to care when nobody else does.